The look on Thorsten's face when I slid the ownership documents across the polished mahogany table is something I'll cherish until my dying day. His perfectly manicured fingers froze midair, hovering above his imported Italian espresso. The color drained from his face so quickly, you'd think someone had pulled a plug at the bottom of his designer shoes. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. These papers confirm that Verity Holdings, the parent company of Lighthouse Property Management, belongs to me, I said calmly, my voice steady despite the thundering in my chest. The same company that manages this house and the other 17 properties you've been so proud of acquiring. My daughter? Zara's eyes widened in disbelief, darting between her husband and me. Up in the attic, I could hear my mother Dorothea's footsteps. Slow, measured steps of a woman who'd been relegated to the dusty corners of a home she once owned. I'm Marceline Thornfield, and 3 years ago, I made the most difficult decision of my life. After losing my husband Elliott to a sudden heart attack, I agreed to sell our cherished craftsman home in Everton Heights to my daughter and her husband at a significant discount. The agreement seemed straightforward. They would purchase the property, and my mother Dorothea could live with them in the downstairs guest suite indefinitely. At 76, Mom was still vibrant and independent, but after Dad's passing 5 years prior, living alone in her colonial home had become too much. It's the perfect arrangement, Thorsten had declared, his arm draped possessively around Zara's shoulders. We get a beautiful home in the historic district, and Dorothea gets family support without losing her independence. Thorsten Blackwood had swept into our lives 6 years ago, charming everyone with his cosmopolitan flair and ambitious plans. He'd moved to our mid-sized town of Everton Heights from a bustling metropolis, claiming he wanted a quieter life to build his property. Business. He had the kind of confidence that filled a room, the type that initially reads as charisma until you realize it's actually just entitlement wearing designer clothes. Darling, Zara would say, her eyes shining with admiration whenever he spoke. Tell Mom about your newest acquisition. And off he'd go, detailing his latest property conquest with the enthusiasm of a hunter recounting a prized kill. I didn't dislike Thorsten at first. He seemed to genuinely care for Zara, and after losing her father, my daughter deserved happiness. Thorsten appeared successful, managing a growing portfolio of rental properties through his company, Lighthouse Property Management. While he occasionally made comments that set my teeth on edge, particularly about old money families clinging to outdated traditions, I chose to focus on how he encouraged Zara's interior design ambitions, something I'd always supported but Elliott had gently discouraged as impractical. The first 6 months after the move seemed to validate our decision. Mom had her spacious first-floor suite with a private bathroom and small sitting area. Zara flourished under Thorsten's encouragement, transforming their new home with her innate design talent. I settled into my modest riverside apartment, enjoying the freedom of downsizing while still seeing my family regularly for Sunday dinners. Then came the subtle shifts. It began with Thorsten's offhand remarks about the older generation taking up valuable space during a dinner where he'd had too much wine. Zara laughed nervously, quickly changing the subject, but I noticed Mom's hand trembling slightly as she reached for her water glass. Next came the repurposing of Mom's sitting room into Thorsten's home office, because he needed a quiet space away from the main home office to take important calls. Mom's reading chair and bookshelf were relocated to a cramped corner of her bedroom. It's fine, Marcy, Mom insisted when I expressed concern. Thorsten works so hard. Besides, I spend most of my time in the sunroom now anyway. The sunroom, a lovely glass-enclosed space at the back of the house, had been Mom's favorite spot until Thorsten decided it would make the perfect location for entertaining clients. Her comfortable wicker furniture was replaced with sleek, uncomfortable modern pieces that looked impressive but felt like sitting on stylish torture devices. With each change, Zara became increasingly apologetic, but remained firmly in Thorsten's corner. "Mom, you don't understand. Thorsten needs to project a certain image for his business. Having Grandma's dated furniture around doesn't align with our brand." Our brand, not their home, their brand. During this time, I remained mostly silent, unwilling to create conflict. After all, it was their house now. The purchase agreement had been finalized, the money transferred. I had no legal right to dictate how they used their space, even if the moral agreement we'd made was being slowly dismantled. Then came the winter pipes burst in the basement, flooding the laundry room and part of Mom's suite. Instead of immediately fixing the damage, Thorsten saw an opportunity. "We've been thinking of converting the main floor into an open concept anyway," he announced over dinner that evening. "This is the perfect chance to redesign the entire first level. We'll list it on Explore B&B when we travel. Do you know how much premium properties in Everton Heights command per night?" "But where will Mom stay during construction?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. "We've prepared the attic space," Zara said, not quite meeting my eyes. "It's cozy. We've added a small bathroom and brought up her bed." "The attic?" I repeated, stunned. "It's mid-July. That space must be 90 degrees during the day." "We've installed a window unit," Thorsten replied dismissively. "It's temporary, 6 months max." "6 months? You said the repairs would take 2 weeks." "We're doing a complete renovation while we have the chance," Thorsten explained, as if I were a child struggling to grasp a simple concept. "The property value will increase substantially. It's a smart investment decision." That evening, I helped Mom pack her essentials. The attic stairs were steep and narrow, clearly not designed for daily use by a septuagenarian with arthritis in both knees. The space itself had been nominally prepared. A twin bed squeezed under the sloped ceiling, a small dresser, and a bathroom addition that was little more than a closet with plumbing. The window air conditioner rattled loudly, but barely cooled the stifling space. "Mom, you can't stay here," I whispered, watching her arrange her few remaining treasures. A silver-framed photo of Dad, her mother's lace handkerchief, the small porcelain dog Elliott had given her on their last Christmas together. "It's only temporary," she echoed Thorsten's words, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Besides, where would I go? My house sold last month." This was news to me. Mom had been keeping her small colonial as a backup plan, renting it out short-term, while she stayed with Zara and Thorsten. The agreement had been that she'd make the final decision about selling once she was certain the living arrangement with them would work. "You sold your house? When? Why didn't you tell me?" Mom looked away. "Thorsten said it made no sense to keep it when I'm here permanently. He handled everything, found a buyer, negotiated the price. He said the market was peaking and waiting. Would be foolish." She paused. "The money is in an account he set up for me. For my care, you know, if I need it someday." Something cold settled in my chest. "Mom, did you speak with your own lawyer about this sale?" She busied herself with folding a nightgown. Thorsten used the company's legal team. He said it would save on fees. I bit my tongue to keep from exploding. This wasn't the time. Not with Mom already struggling to adjust to this inappropriate living space. Instead, I helped her arrange her minimal belongings to maximize the cramped quarters, promised to return the next day with a better fan, and left with a lead weight in my stomach. As I drove home, my mind raced through the events of the past year. The gradual erosion of Mom's space and independence, Thorsten's increasing control over our family's assets, Zara's troubling transformation from my confident, independent daughter to someone who deferred to her husband on all matters. By the time I reached my apartment, a plan was forming. I hadn't built a successful consulting business by being passive when faced with problems. I'd developed a reputation for finding unconventional solutions to complex situations. Now I needed to apply those skills to my own family crisis. The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to Leona Frost, my attorney of 15 years and closest friend. The second was to Desmond Whitlock, a private investigator I'd worked with on a corporate case several years earlier. I need everything you can find on Thorsten Blackwood and Lighthouse Property Management, I told Desmond. Business practices, financial status, client complaints, personal history, anything that might give me leverage. Sounds personal? Desmond observed. It is, I admitted. My mother's welfare is at stake. With Leona, I was more specific. I need to know if there's any way to legally challenge my mother's home sale if it was done under duress or without proper independent counsel. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And I want to review the purchase agreement for my house as well. There was language about my mother's living arrangements that may have been violated. Marcy, Leona said gently, these are difficult cases to prove, especially within families. What's really going on? I told her everything, from the gradual encroachment on Mom's space to the current attic situation. When I described visiting Mom the previous evening, finding her attempting to navigate the steep stairs with a cup of tea balanced precariously on a book because Thorsten had commented on water rings on the furniture, Leona's professional demeanor cracked. This is elder abuse, Marcy. Subtle, but real. We need to get her out of there. I know, I agreed, but she has nowhere to go. Her house is sold and my apartment barely fits me. Besides, removing her completely might estrange me. From Zara for good. So what are you thinking? I hesitated, then shared the beginnings of my plan. I need to understand exactly what Thorsten's business involves and find his vulnerability. Everyone has one. Once I know what makes him tick, what he values most, I'll have the leverage I need. Leona's silence spoke volumes. Finally, she said, just be careful. Men like this can be vindictive when cornered. Over the next 3 weeks, I maintained a careful facade of acceptance while gathering information. I visited Mom daily, bringing comforts to make the attic more livable, a better cooling system, a small refrigerator so she wouldn't have to navigate the stairs for every drink, a comfortable chair that actually fit in the limited space. Thorsten seemed pleased by my apparent compliance, even inviting me to stay for dinner occasionally. During these meals, I listened attentively as he boasted about his business expansions. The vacation rental market in Everton Heights is exploding, he explained one evening, gesturing expansively with his wine glass. People want authentic experiences in historic homes, not cookie-cutter hotels. I've acquired 17 properties in the historic district alone. That's impressive, I remarked. How do you manage so many properties? He preened at the question. Lighthouse handles everything in-house. We renovate, furnish, market, and manage the entire guest experience. Most owners don't want the headache of dealing with day-to-day operations. They're happy to pay our premium management fee for the convenience. And the properties themselves? Do you own them or just manage them? A mix, he said vaguely. Some are investment partnerships, others straight management contracts. The real money is in controlling the entire ecosystem. Throughout these conversations, Zara remained oddly quiet, occasionally touching Thorsten's arm when he became too boastful, as if gently reminding him to dial back his disclosures. Meanwhile, Desmond was earning his substantial fee. His first report contained preliminary findings about Lighthouse Property Management, a company that had indeed grown rapidly over the past 5 years, but with some troubling patterns. He's operating on razor-thin margins, Desmond explained, during our discreet meeting at a cafe 2 towns over. Lighthouse presents itself as a premium management company, but it's basically a house of cards. He uses new client acquisition funds to cover operational shortfalls for existing properties. That sounds like a Ponzi scheme, I observed. Similar structure, different packaging. He's not technically promising investment returns. He's selling management services. But he's definitely using new client money to maintain the illusion of successful operations. Any complaints? Several, but most get resolved quickly with partial refunds and NDAs. He's smart. He knows exactly how much dissatisfaction he can get away with before it becomes a legal liability. This was useful, but not yet the leverage I needed. The real breakthrough came 2 days later when Desmond called with urgent news. "You need to see this," he said, forwarding a document to my secure email. I followed the ownership trail for Lighthouse Property Management. It's a subsidiary of something called Verity Holdings, which was established 5 years ago by an anonymous investor. I opened the document, scanning the legal language until I reached the section on corporate structure. What I saw made me gasp. "This can't be right," I whispered. "I triple-checked," Desmond confirmed. Verity Holdings was created by Elliott, Thornfield just before his death. Your husband owned the parent company of Lighthouse Property Management. According to the succession documents, ownership transferred to you when he died. Thorsten Blackwood doesn't own the company he's been operating. You do. The room seemed to spin around me. Elliott had never mentioned this investment. We had always discussed major financial decisions, but this, creating an entire holding company, he had kept completely secret. "There's more," Desmond continued. "Based on the financial records I've obtained, Thorsten has been siphoning profits from the operation into personal accounts. He's essentially been embezzling from you for 3 years. I sat in stunned silence, memories rushing back. Elliott's late nights at the office in the months before his heart attack, his vague comments about setting up security for our future, the business trip to meet a promising young entrepreneur with an innovative property concept. That entrepreneur had been Thorsten. Somehow, he had convinced Elliott to invest in his fledgling property management concept. And after Elliott died, Thorsten had simply taken over, counting on the fact that I wouldn't know about the investment. But how had he ended up with Zara? The timeline suddenly seemed suspicious. Thorsten had appeared in our lives approximately 6 months after Elliott's death, supposedly new to town. Had he deliberately targeted my daughter to gain further control of the business? A cold fury settled over me, clearing my mind and sharpening my focus. For 3 years, this man had been systematically taking everything my family had built. Our home, my mother's house, my husband's investment, and my daughter's independence. Now I had the leverage I needed. The next step was confirming the legal details with Leona, who verified the document's authenticity and helped me understand the full extent of my rights as the actual owner of Verity Holdings. You have complete authority to audit the company's operations, replace management, and pursue legal action for misappropriation of funds, she explained. But Marcy, this goes beyond business. If Thorsten purposely concealed your ownership and married Zara to secure his position, that's fraud, with significant personal dimensions. I need to be strategic, I replied, thinking of my daughter and mother caught in this web. A public legal battle could hurt them both. I need Thorsten to step away quietly, with minimal disruption to their lives. Together, we crafted a careful approach. Leona helped me prepare the necessary documents to assert my ownership while simultaneously documenting the evidence of financial misconduct. We compiled everything into a professional portfolio, the kind I would present to a client when delivering difficult findings. Then, I requested a formal meeting at their home. I'd like to discuss some family financial matters, I told Zara. Over the phone. Can we set aside time this Saturday? It's important that both you and Thorsten are present. Is everything okay, Mom? You sound strange. Everything will be resolved soon, I assured her. Just make sure you're both available. I arrived Saturday morning armed with documents, determination, and Leona's contact information on speed dial. Mom was having a good day, managing to come downstairs for breakfast despite her arthritis flaring from the dampness of the attic. As we gathered in the formal dining room, Thorsten's preferred location for important discussions, I noticed the renovation was indeed proceeding rapidly. The previously warm, welcoming spaces were being transformed into something that resembled a luxury hotel, beautiful but impersonal. "So, what's this about, Marceline?" Thorsten asked, his tone suggesting mild inconvenience at having his Saturday interrupted. Zara mentioned family finances. "Yes," I replied calmly, opening my portfolio. Specifically about Verity Holdings and its subsidiary, Lighthouse Property Management. His expression didn't change, but I noticed his hand tighten around his espresso cup. "What about it?" "I've been reviewing my late husband's investments and discovered something interesting." I slid the ownership documents across the polished mahogany table, watching as his perfectly manicured fingers froze mid-air, hovering above his imported Italian espresso. The color drained from his face so quickly you'd think someone had pulled a plug at the bottom of his designer shoes. "These papers confirm that Verity Holdings, the parent company of Lighthouse Property Management, belongs to me," I said, my voice remaining steady despite the thundering in my chest. "The same company that manages this house and the other 17 properties you've been so proud of acquiring." Zara's eyes widened in disbelief, darting between her husband and me. Up in the attic, I could hear my mother's footsteps, slow, measured steps of a woman who'd been relegated to the dusty corners of a home she once owned. But this was just the beginning of the conversation that would change everything for our family forever. The silence that followed my revelation seemed to stretch into eternity. Thorsten's face cycled through emotions: shock, disbelief, calculation, and finally, an attempt at composure. He straightened his designer collar and forced a laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "There must be some mistake," he said, his voice pitched higher than usual. "I established Lighthouse Property Management myself. I built it from nothing." I kept my expression neutral as I slid another document across the table. "This is the original investment agreement between you and Elliott. He provided the startup capital, $300,000, in exchange for a controlling interest in the holding company that would own Lighthouse." Zara reached for the document with trembling fingers. "Dad invested in Thorsten's business? Why didn't I know about this?" "I didn't know either, until recently," I admitted. "Your father created Verity Holdings just before he died. The succession documents clearly state that ownership transferred to me upon his death." Thorsten's jaw clenched. "This is absurd. Even if Elliott made an initial investment, I've been running the company for years. I've built it into what it is today. You can't just waltz in and claim ownership after all this time." "Actually, I can," I replied, maintaining my calm. "Not only is the legal documentation ironclad, but I've also discovered some concerning financial irregularities that I'm sure you wouldn't want made public." His eyes narrowed. "What are you implying?" "The systematic diversion of company profits into personal accounts, the questionable loan structures, the commingling of client trust funds with operational expenses." I laid out photocopies of bank statements and transfer records. "Embezzlement is a serious crime, Thorsten." Zara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mom, what are you saying? Thorsten wouldn't—" "Zara, please." Thorsten cut her off, his voice sharp. Then, composing himself, he turned to me with a practiced smile. "Marceline, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. These transactions were all authorized compensatory distributions. My accountant can explain everything." "I'm sure he can try," I replied. "But the board of Verity Holdings, which consists of me at the moment, never approved these distributions. That makes them unauthorized appropriations of company funds." From upstairs came the sound of a door opening, followed by the slow, careful thud of my mother's cane on the hardwood floor. The three of us looked up toward the ceiling, and something in that shared glance seemed to shift the atmosphere in the room. "This isn't just about business, is it?" Thorsten asked quietly. "No," I admitted, It's about family. It's about respect. It's about making things right. Zara looked between us, confusion and the dawning of understanding battling across her. Mom, what do you want? It was the question I'd been preparing for. First, I want Mom moved back to a proper bedroom. Today. Second, I want a full financial accounting of Lighthouse's operations, including all client contracts and property titles. Third, I want to review my mother's house sale and ensure she received fair market value. After that, we can discuss the future structure of the business. Thorsten's jaw worked silently as he calculated his options. Finally, he stood abruptly. I need to consult my lawyer before we continue this conversation. Of course, I agreed reasonably. In the meantime, I'll help Mom move her things downstairs. He began gathering the documents, but I placed my hand firmly on them. These stay with me. Your lawyer can contact Leona Frost for copies of anything relevant. A flash of genuine fear crossed his face at the mention of Leona's name. Her reputation as a relentless litigator preceded her. Zara hadn't moved, her eyes fixed on the tabletop. I don't understand, she whispered. How long have you known about this, Mom? 3 weeks, I replied honestly. I started investigating when Mom was moved to the attic. She flinched at that, guilt shadowing her features. I didn't want her up there, she said softly. But Thorsten said it was necessary for the renovation schedule. Thorsten shot her a warning look. Zara, don't say anything more without legal counsel present. I felt a surge of anger at his attempt to silence my daughter, but before I could respond, a voice came from the doorway. I think I've been silent long enough, don't you? We all turned to see Mom standing there, one hand gripping her cane, the other braced against the doorframe. Despite the physical effort it clearly took for her to stand there, her eyes were clear and sharp. I'd like to sit down, she announced. My knees aren't what they used to be, especially after climbing those attic stairs for 3 weeks. Zara immediately jumped up to help her grandmother to a chair. Thorsten remained standing, his body language screaming discomfort. Dorothea, he began in his most charming tone. I apologize if the temporary accommodations have been difficult. We certainly never intended. Save it, Mom interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. I've heard enough pretty words from you to last a lifetime. Actions are what matter, young man, and yours have been deplorable. Thorsten's mask slipped for a moment, revealing the coldness beneath. With all due respect, this is a business. Discussion between Marceline and myself. Family sentiments have no place here. Mom leaned forward, her voice surprisingly strong. That's where you're wrong. This family built everything you've been taking credit for. This house? I helped Elliott buy it for Marceline when they married. The seed money for your company? That came from Elliott's inheritance. Money his grandmother left specifically to support his family's future. And those historic properties you're so proud of acquiring? Many belong to people I've known my entire life, people who trusted you because you married into our family. The room fell silent as her words landed with unexpected force. I had never heard Mom speak so directly about family finances. She had always been proper, discreet, a product of her generation's belief that money matters stayed private. Everything has been done legally, Thorsten insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Legal doesn't always mean right, Mom replied. I may be old, but I'm not blind. I've watched you chip away at what this family built, turning our home into a showpiece where I'm barely tolerated. She turned to Zara. And I've watched my granddaughter become a shadow of herself, afraid to speak her mind in her own home. Zara's eyes filled with tears. Grandma, I never meant— I know, sweetheart, Mom said gently. We all make compromises in relationships. But there's a difference between compromise and capitulation. Thorsten checked his watch in a deliberate show of impatience. This is all very touching, but I have appointments this afternoon. Marceline, have your lawyer contact mine. We'll resolve this professionally. He moved toward the door, clearly eager to escape. "One moment," I said, my voice stopping him mid-stride. "Before you go, there's something else you should know." He turned back reluctantly. "I've spoken with several of your clients, the actual property owners. They were quite interested to learn about Lighthouse's fee structure and how it compares to industry standards." His face darkened. "You had no right to contact my clients." "They're the company's clients, not yours," I corrected him. "And as the owner of the company, I have every right to ensure they're being treated fairly." "You're interfering with established business relationships," he snapped. "That's tortious interference. I could sue you for that." "You could try," I acknowledged. "But then we'd have to open the books completely during discovery. All those creative accounting practices would be subject to expert analysis. Is that really what you want?" The threat of complete financial transparency clearly unnerved him. Thorsten was smart enough to know when he was outmaneuvered. He adjusted his strategy, his voice taking on a reasonable tone. "Look, perhaps we've all gotten off on the wrong foot here. I never intended to create family discord. Why don't we take some time to cool down, consult our respective advisors, and reconvene next week? I'm sure we can work out an arrangement. That satisfies everyone." It was a classic deflection tactic. Delay, diminish, distract. Under normal circumstances, it might have worked. I had always been the peacemaker in the family, willing to compromise to maintain harmony. But these weren't normal circumstances, and I wasn't the same person who had silently watched my mother being mistreated. "Here's what's going to happen today," I said firmly. "Mom is moving back downstairs, into the blue guest room, which I notice hasn't been demolished yet. You will provide me with complete access to all company records by Monday morning, and you will not make any business decisions or financial transactions related to Lighthouse without my explicit approval. And if I refuse?" His tone was challenging, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. "Then I'll call an emergency meeting of all property owners currently under Lighthouse management. I'll explain the financial irregularities I've discovered and advise them to review their contracts immediately. I imagine many would choose to terminate their agreements once they understand how their money has been handled." It was a direct hit to his most vulnerable point, his reputation within the community of wealthy property owners. Without their trust, his carefully constructed business persona would crumble. Zara had been watching this exchange with growing distress. "Stop it, both of you," she pleaded. "This is my family. There has to be a better way to resolve this." I softened my tone. "I agree, sweetheart. That's why I'm offering a path forward that doesn't involve public disclosure or legal proceedings, but it requires Thorsten to acknowledge reality and cooperate." Thorsten recognized the corner he was in. With forced pleasantness, he said, "Of course I'll cooperate. As I said, this is clearly a misunderstanding. We'll sort everything out, professionally." He turned to Zara. "Darling, why don't you help your grandmother move her things while I make some calls?" After they left the room, he dropped the pretense. "You've made a serious tactical error, Marceline. You think you have the upper hand, but you don't understand what you're dealing with." "Actually, I do," I replied calmly. "I understand exactly what I'm dealing with. A man who married my daughter to gain control of assets he knew belonged to our family. A man who has been systematically isolating her from her family while diminishing her confidence. A man who treated my elderly mother like an inconvenience to be tucked away and forgotten." His expression hardened. "That's a creative interpretation of events. Here's another one. A bitter widow who can't stand to see her son-in-law succeed, where her husband failed. Elliott had potential, but he lacked vision. I took his investment and built something significant. You should be thanking me, not threatening me." The mention of Elliott sparked something fierce within me, but I controlled my response. Getting emotional would play into Thorsten's hands. "Interesting theory," I said, gathering my documents. "Unfortunately, the financial records tell a different story. I'll see myself out. Remember, full access to company records by Monday." As I walked toward the door, Thorsten called after me. You know, Zara will never forgive you if you destroy what we've built. She loves our life. I paused, turning back to meet his gaze. That's the difference between us, Thorsten. I believe in my daughter's strength. She deserves to make choices based on truth, not manipulation. With that, I left, my heart pounding, but my resolve stronger than ever. In the guest bedroom, I found Zara and Mom sorting through the few belongings that had been relegated to the attic. Mom looked exhausted, but relieved to be back on the main floor. I've made up the bed with fresh linens, Zara said, her voice subdued. The bathroom still has all of Grandma's favorite soaps. I noticed she had already brought down several boxes, more than Mom could have accumulated in the attic. Opening one, I discovered Mom's antique clock collection that had supposedly been put in climate-controlled storage. I kept some things in my closet, Zara explained, seeing my surprise. Thorsten wanted to sell them, but I couldn't. They're Grandma's treasures. That small act of defiance gave me hope. My daughter was still in there, beneath the layers of Thorsten's influence. Thank you, I said simply, touching her arm. That was brave. She looked startled. Brave? It's just some old clocks. It's more than that, I replied. It's standing up for what you know is right, even in a small way. Mom settled onto the edge of the bed, clearly conserving her energy. This room gets the morning light, she observed. I've missed that in the attic. It was so dark up there, even during the day. Zara's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. Grandma, I should have insisted you stay downstairs. I knew the attic wasn't right, but Thorsten said. Hush now, Mom interrupted gently. What's done is done. We look forward, not back. I helped arrange Mom's medication on the nightstand. The arthritis pills, the heart medication, the vitamins she insisted on taking despite my teasing about expensive urine. As I worked, I noticed Zara watching me, her expression troubled. Mom, she said finally, is it true about Dad investing in Thorsten's company? Yes, I confirmed. I have all the documentation. And Thorsten knew? All this time? I hesitated, not wanting to drive a wedge between them, yet unwilling to shield her from the truth. The evidence suggests he did. She absorbed this, her brow furrowed. Why wouldn't he tell me? We don't keep secrets. Mom and I exchanged glances but said nothing. Some realizations had to come from within. After we finished settling Mom in, I prepared to leave. Thorsten was nowhere to be seen, likely holed up in his office making frantic calls to damage control the situation. At the front door, Zara stopped me. Mom, I don't know what to think about all this. Thorsten's not perfect, but he's my husband. We've built a life together. I understand, I assured her. I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm just trying to protect our family, all of us, including you. By threatening my husband's business? By reclaiming what rightfully belongs to us and ensuring it's managed ethically, I corrected gently. There's a difference. She looked unconvinced. What happens now? Now we get clarity. Once we understand exactly what's been happening with the business, we can make informed decisions about moving forward. And if Thorsten refuses to cooperate? Let's hope he's smarter than that, I said, not wanting to detail the legal consequences I was prepared to pursue. As I drove home, my mind was racing with next steps. Leona had already prepared for the possibility of resistance, filing preliminary paperwork to freeze certain accounts if necessary. Desmond was continuing to gather evidence about the property acquisitions, particularly Mom's house sale, which seemed increasingly suspicious. The weekend passed in a flurry of preparation. I reviewed all the documentation repeatedly, ensuring I understood every detail of the company's structure and operations. Leona came over Sunday afternoon, bringing takeout and moral support as we strategized. You realize he's not going to just hand over the records, she warned. picking at her pad tie. Men like Thorsten don't surrender control easily. I know, I acknowledged. That's why we're prepared for escalation. But I'm hoping the threat to his reputation will be enough. He's worked hard to position himself as a trusted property manager to Everton's elite. If that trust evaporates, his business model collapses, Leona finished. Smart approach. Hit him where it hurts without necessarily going nuclear. She paused, studying me. How's Zara taking all this? I sighed. Confused. Defensive. She doesn't want to believe Thorsten would deliberately deceive her. And your mother? Relieved to be out of the attic, but tired. This whole situation has taken a toll on her. Leona nodded sympathetically. And what about you? Are you prepared for the possibility that Zara might not thank you for this intervention? It was the question I'd been avoiding. I have to believe that once she knows the full truth, she'll understand why I had to act, and if not... I swallowed hard. At least Mom will be safe and treated with dignity. That has to be enough. Monday morning arrived with a tension headache and a text from Zara. Thorsten left early for meetings, said he'll have his lawyer contact yours about the records. I forwarded the message to Leona, who responded immediately. Stalling tactic. Implementing contingency plan. The contingency plan was a formal request for financial records that Leona had prepared, citing my authority as the controlling shareholder of Verity Holdings. She delivered it to Lighthouse's office that morning, with copies to their bank and their external accountant. By noon, Thorsten was calling me, his carefully controlled voice betraying his fury. You had no right to contact my banking partners. They've frozen our operational accounts based on your ridiculous claims. I'm merely exercising my rights as the majority shareholder, I replied calmly. Since you chose not to provide the records voluntarily, more formal measures became necessary. You're crippling the business. We have property maintenance scheduled, vendor payments due. I'm aware. That's why Leona has established a temporary oversight mechanism. Legitimate business expenses will be approved and processed. All you need to do is submit proper documentation. His laugh was bitter. So I need to ask permission to run my own company now? It's not your company, Thorsten. That's the point you seem determined to miss. There was a long pause before he spoke, again his voice dangerously quiet. You have no idea what you've started, Marceline. None at all. The threat hung in the air between us. Is that all? I asked evenly. For now, he replied, and hung up. I immediately called Zara, concerned about how Thorsten's anger might affect her. He's furious, she confirmed when she answered. He came home, threw some things in a bag, and left again. Said he needed space to strategize. Are you okay? I don't know, she admitted. Everything feels like it's falling apart. Thorsten's business accounts are frozen. He says we might not be able to pay the contractors working on the house. The legitimate expenses will be covered, I assured her. This is just temporary until we sort out the financial situation. Mom? Her voice cracked slightly. I found something in Thorsten's office. I wasn't snooping exactly. I was looking for our household budget to figure out which bills might be affected. My pulse quickened. What did you find? Documents about Grandma's house sale. The final sale price was much higher than what was deposited in her account. This confirmed my suspicions. How much higher? Nearly double, she whispered. And there was a note about routing the difference through something called auxiliary consulting fees. Mom, did Thorsten steal from Grandma? The pain in her voice made my heart ache. It appears he may have diverted some of the proceeds, yes. Her breath caught. I don't want to believe it. There has to be an explanation. I hope there is, I said gently. That's why we need full transparency. I never should have let him handle Grandma's affairs, she said, guilt evident in her voice. I just thought. He understands real estate so much better than we do. We all trusted him, I reminded her. That's not your fault. After we hung up, I immediately called Leona to relay this new information about Mom's house sale. She was predictably outraged. Financial exploitation of an elder. That adds another dimension to this case. We might need to involve adult protective services. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, I cautioned. We need to confirm exactly what happened with that transaction. Right now, it's just a suspicious document and a discrepancy Zara noticed. Fair enough, but this strengthens our position considerably. If he diverted funds from Dorothea's house sale, that's potentially criminal conduct. I agreed, but felt surprisingly little satisfaction. The goal had never been to destroy Thorsten, only to protect my family and reclaim what rightfully belonged to us. The possibility of criminal charges complicated everything, especially for Zara. The situation escalated quickly over the next few days. Thorsten's lawyer, a slick corporate attorney named Westbrook, contacted Leona with a settlement offer that amounted to buying me out for a fraction of what the company was worth. Leona rejected it outright. "They're testing your resolve," she explained, "seeing if you'll accept a quick payday to walk away." Meanwhile, Zara reported that Thorsten had barely been home, claiming he was working around the clock to save the business from your mother's interference. When he was home, he was distant and preoccupied, spending hours on the phone in hushed conversations that stopped whenever she entered the room. Mom, for her part, seemed to be regaining her strength now that she was back in a proper bedroom. The arthritis pain that had worsened during her attic stay began to subside with better sleep and less stair climbing. She even ventured out to the garden, supervising the landscapers with her characteristic blend of gentleness and uncompromising standards. By Thursday, Thorsten's strategy shifted. Rather than continued resistance, he suddenly agreed to provide the company records, but only directly to me, not through our lawyers. "He wants a private meeting," Leona reported skeptically. "Claims he has explanations for everything that will make sense once you sit down together." "It's a trap," I said immediately. "He's looking for a way to manipulate the situation." "Almost certainly," she agreed, "but it might be worth hearing what he has to say. Just not alone, and not without preparation." We arranged for the meeting to take place at Leona's office the following morning. Her assistant would take detailed notes, and we would record the conversation with Thorsten's knowledge and consent. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. Verity. Holdings wasn't Elliott's only secret. Ask yourself why he created it just before he died. I showed it to Leona immediately. "Classic intimidation tactic," she assessed. "He's trying to unsettle you before the meeting. If Elliott had other business interests, they would have appeared in the estate settlement." Still, the message lingered in my mind. Elliott and I had always been transparent with each other about finances. The discovery of Verity Holdings had been a shock precisely because it was so out of character. Why would he make such a significant investment without discussing it with me? And why create a holding company rather than investing directly? These questions followed me into uneasy dreams, where Elliott kept trying to tell me something important, but I couldn't hear him over the sound of attic stairs creaking. I arrived at Leona's office early the next morning, determined to maintain control of the narrative despite Thorsten's attempts to throw me off balance. The conference room was prepared, water and coffee arranged on the sideboard, recording equipment discreetly positioned. At precisely 10 a.m., Thorsten arrived, not with his lawyer as expected, but alone, carrying a slim leather portfolio. He looked immaculate as always, but there was a tension around his eyes that betrayed the strain of the past week. "Marceline," he greeted me with forced cordiality. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." "Let's be clear," I replied. "I'm here to receive the company records you finally agreed to provide. Nothing more." He smiled tightly. "Of course. But there's context you should understand." He glanced at Leona and her assistant. "Some of which is quite personal." Leona raised an eyebrow. Mr. Blackwood, anything you wish to share with my client can be said in my presence. That was the condition of this meeting. He appeared to consider this, then nodded reluctantly. Very well. But I would ask that you approach what I'm about to share with discretion. There are aspects of this situation that could be painful for all involved if made public. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes at his theatrics. Just get to the point, Thorsten. He opened his portfolio and slid a document across the table. It was a letter, written in Elliott's distinctive handwriting, dated 1 week before his death. I believe this will provide the context you've been missing, he said quietly. As I began to read the letter addressed to Thorsten, I realized with growing horror that it would indeed change everything, but not in the way Thorsten had hoped. My hands trembled slightly as I read the letter, my husband's words reaching out from beyond the grave, telling a story I never knew. Thorsten, by the time you read this, my condition will likely have worsened. The doctors give me 6 months at most, but I suspect it will be sooner. I've chosen not to burden Marceline with this knowledge. After losing her father suddenly last year, I can't bear to make her watch me decline. I've told her my frequent doctor visits are routine checkups, a small deception to protect her from months of anticipatory grief. This accelerates our timeline. The investment structure we discussed must be implemented immediately. Verity Holdings will serve as the umbrella for Lighthouse Management and secure my family's financial future. You've shown remarkable aptitude for property management, and your vision for growth in Everton Heights aligns with what I've long believed about our community's potential. My attorney has prepared the succession documents ensuring Marceline inherits controlling interest. She has a brilliant mind for business, though she's chosen to focus on her consulting career rather than our family investments. I trust you'll guide her through the transition when the time is right, showing her the same respect you've shown me throughout our discussions. One final matter. I've instructed the doctors not to reveal my prognosis to my family under any circumstances. This is my burden to bear, and I choose to protect them from the prolonged suffering knowledge would bring. I'll tell Marceline when I believe the time is right. With gratitude for your partnership, Elliott Thornfield. I read the letter twice, then a third time, trying to absorb its implications. Elliott had known he was dying. He had deliberately kept this knowledge from me, making unilateral decisions about our family's future while maintaining a facade of normalcy. Where did you get this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Elliott gave it to me the week before he died, Thorsten replied. I've kept it private out of respect for his wishes. He wanted to protect you. I looked up sharply. And yet you're showing it to me now. Why? Because you need to understand the context of Verity Holdings' creation, Thorsten explained, his tone softening. Elliott and I had been discussing the investment for months. He saw potential in my business model and wanted to secure your financial future, knowing he wouldn't be there. Leona interjected, her voice professionally neutral, but her eyes watchful. This letter, while personally significant, doesn't change the legal ownership structure of Verity Holdings, nor does it explain the financial irregularities we've identified. Thorsten nodded, acknowledging her point. You're right. The letter itself doesn't address those issues. But it establishes something important. Elliott and I had a relationship based on mutual respect and trust. He believed in my vision for Lighthouse. And yet you never told me about any of this, I said, finding my voice again. You never mentioned that my husband had invested in your company. You never shared that he'd made me the controlling owner. I tried, Thorsten claimed, leaning forward earnestly. After a respectful mourning period, I approached you about business matters. You were still deep in grief, Marceline. You said, and I quote, I can't deal with Elliott's business affairs right now. Just handle whatever needs handling. I remembered that conversation, or at least a version of it. 3 months after Elliott's death, Thorsten had indeed come to me with what he'd described as Some investment paperwork Elliott was handling. In my fog of grief, I'd signed documents he'd presented, barely registering their contents. "Those documents you had me sign," I said slowly. "What exactly were they?" Thorsten shifted in his seat. "Management authorization forms. They allowed me to continue operating Lighthouse without disruption during your period of grief." Leona's eyes narrowed. "We'll need to see those forms immediately." "Of course," Thorsten agreed smoothly. "They're included in the records I've brought today." He patted his portfolio. "Along with complete documentation of all the financial transactions Ms. Frost has questioned." I struggled to reconcile the man sitting across from me, controlled, reasonable, apparently forthcoming, with the one who had relegated my mother to an attic and systematically marginalized her within her former home. "None of this explains your treatment of my mother," I said flatly. A flicker of genuine discomfort crossed his face. "That situation is regrettable. The renovation timeline created pressure, and I made a poor decision. I should have found better accommodations for Dorothea." "Regrettable," I repeated. "Is that how you'd characterize making a 76-year-old woman with arthritis climb steep attic stairs multiple times daily? Or selling her house without proper legal representation and diverting half the proceeds?" His composure slipped slightly. "That's not an accurate characterization of the transaction." "Then please," I gestured to his portfolio, "enlighten us." Thorsten extracted another document, a settlement statement from Mom's house sale. Dorothea's house sold for $785,000. After the mortgage payoff and settlement costs, the net proceeds were $412,000. He pointed to a line item. "As you can see, $205,000 was deposited directly to her account. The remaining $207,000 was allocated to a specialized elder care investment fund I established for her future needs." "Without her knowledge or consent," I noted. "With her signature," he countered, producing yet another document bearing what appeared to be Mom's shaky handwriting. Dorothea agreed to this arrangement. She wanted to ensure she wouldn't burden the family if her health declined. I examined the signature carefully. It looked authentic, but the circumstances under which it had been obtained seemed suspect at best. "My mother has never worried about being a burden," I said, "and she would never agree to have her money managed without having access to statements or information. Elderly individuals often have concerns they don't share with their children," Thorsten replied smoothly. "They don't want to worry you." The parallel to Elliott's supposed protection was not lost on me. Apparently, according to Thorsten, everyone in my life had been conspiring to shield me from difficult truths. My husband about his health. My mother about her financial concerns. "I'd like to see statements for this elder care investment fund," Leona interjected. Thorsten hesitated, then said, "Those can be provided. There may be a delay as they're held by a separate financial institution." Leona made a note. "We'll expect those by close of business tomorrow." The meeting continued in this vein for nearly 2 hours, Thorsten producing documentation that superficially addressed our concerns while raising new questions in the process. For every financial irregularity we identified, he offered a plausible explanation backed by paperwork that would require thorough verification. Throughout it all, I struggled to maintain focus as Elliott's letter kept intruding into my thoughts. My husband had known he was dying. He had made arrangements, planned, for our future, all while keeping me in the dark. The betrayal cut deep, tangling with my grief in ways I couldn't fully process. As the meeting concluded, Thorsten made what he clearly considered a generous offer. "Given the misunderstandings that have arisen, I propose a restructuring of Lighthouse's management. Marceline would be formally acknowledged as the majority owner of Verity Holdings, with appropriate distributions of profits. I would continue to manage day-to-day operations with quarterly reporting and oversight. Leona responded professionally that we would consider his proposal after thoroughly reviewing all the provided documentation. Outside her office, in the privacy of her small courtyard garden, I finally gave voice to my confusion. I don't know what to believe anymore. Could Elliott really have kept his illness from me? Would Mom actually sign away control of her money without telling me? Leona rested a hand on my shoulder. People sometimes make decisions that seem incomprehensible to those who love them. But before you accept Thorsten's narrative at face value, let's verify everything independently. How? Elliott's doctors won't discuss his medical history, even posthumously. No, but his insurance company might have records of claims. And we can certainly investigate this elder care fund Thorsten claims to have established for Dorothea. I nodded, gathering my composure. Whatever the truth about Elliott's illness, it doesn't change the fact that Thorsten concealed my ownership of Verity Holdings for 3 years, and it doesn't justify his treatment of Mom. Exactly, Leona agreed. Don't let this letter distract you from the core issues. That may be precisely what he intended. I drove directly to Zara's house, my old house, determined to speak with Mom about the documents Thorsten had presented. When I arrived, I was surprised to find the renovation crew absent. The front door stood slightly ajar. "Hello?" I called, stepping cautiously into the entryway. "Mom? Zara?" "In here," my mother's voice called from the sunroom. I found her seated in her favorite wicker chair, the one that had supposedly been placed in storage during the renovation. She was carefully arranging flowers in a crystal vase, another item I thought had been packed away. "You're back in your element," I observed, feeling a small measure of relief at seeing her engaged in an activity she loved. "Zara brought everything back," Mom explained, her deft fingers positioning a spray of delphiniums. Said it was time. The house felt like home again. I sat beside her, taking in the transformation of the space. Gone were Thorsten's uncomfortable modern pieces, replaced by the warm, elegant furniture that had graced the sunroom for years. "Mom, I need to ask you something important," I began carefully. "Did you sign papers giving Thorsten control over money from your house sale? For something called an elder care investment fund?" Her hands stilled, a frown creasing her forehead. "He did have me sign something, said it was necessary for the deposit because I wasn't going to the closing in person." She looked troubled. "I asked for copies, but he said they'd come in the mail. They never did." "And the amount? Did he tell you how much the house sold for?" "After expenses, he said about $200,000, which seemed low, but property values had dropped after that new highway announcement." She studied my expression. "Was that wrong?" "The house sold for $785,000, Mom. After all expenses, there was over $400,000 in proceeds." Her face paled. "That's not possible. Where's the rest of the money?" "Thorsten claims he put it in a special investment account for your future care. You supposedly agreed to this arrangement." Mom set down her clippers with deliberate care. "I never agreed to any such thing. I would remember discussing that much money." The confirmation of my suspicions brought both validation and dread. "We'll get it back," I promised. "All of it." "I feel like such a fool," she said quietly. "Trusting him with my house, my money, letting him move me to that attic without proper protest." "You're not the fool," I assured her. "He's manipulated. All of us. Even Elliott, it seems." I showed her Elliott's letter, watching as she absorbed the revelations about her son-in-law's health. "That poor boy," she murmured when she finished reading. "Carrying that burden alone." "Did you suspect? Did he show any signs?" She considered this thoughtfully. "There were moments. He tired more easily that last year. And there was that time he nearly collapsed after carrying groceries upstairs." Her eyes met mine. But whenever I expressed concern, he'd deflect, with a joke or change the subject. Elliott never wanted to worry anyone. The observation aligned perfectly with the husband I had known, or thought I had known. Elliott had always shouldered responsibilities himself, protecting others from difficulty whenever possible. "Where's Zara?" I asked, suddenly aware of my daughter's absence. "She left about an hour ago. Said she needed to clear her head." Mom adjusted a lily in her arrangement. "She's been through quite a lot these past few days. Finding those documents about my house, watching her husband, caught in lies, seeing her father's handwriting unexpectedly. Thorsten showed her the letter too?" Mom nodded. "This morning before he went to meet you. She was devastated, not just about Elliott's illness, but about being kept in the dark by both her father and her husband." I felt a surge of anger at Thorsten for using Elliott's letter to manipulate Zara's emotions at such a vulnerable time. "Did she say where she was going?" "No, but she took that old leather backpack she used for hiking. Remember how she and Elliott would spend Saturdays exploring the nature preserve? After he died, she couldn't bear to go there. But today, she packed water and those trail snacks she likes." The nature preserve, of course. It had been their special place, 60 acres of protected woodland where Elliott had taught Zara to identify birds, trees, and stars. After his death, she had packed away her hiking gear and field guides, unable to face those memories. "I should find her," I said, rising. Mom reached for my hand. "Give her time, Marcy. She needs to process this in her own way, just as you do." I reluctantly acknowledged the wisdom in her words. "You're right. I just worry about her emotional state right now." "Zara is stronger than you think," Mom said with quiet certainty. "Than any of us realized, perhaps. This morning, after Thorsten left, she moved me back to the sunroom herself, brought all my things down from storage in the garage, told the renovation crew they were on hiatus until further notice. This was a side of my daughter I hadn't seen in years, decisive, independent, willing to countermand Thorsten's plans. She did all that? With her own hands, Mom confirmed. Said, it was time to set things right, starting with making sure I was comfortable in my own home again. My throat tightened with emotion. That sounds like the Zara I raised. She's still in there, Mom agreed. Beneath all of Thorsten's influence, she just needed a catalyst to find herself again. I stayed with Mom through the afternoon, helping her restore other personal touches to the house that had been systematically removed during Thorsten's renovations. We hung family photos that had been relegated to storage, brought cherished books back to accessible shelves, and reinstated the vintage kitchen clock that had kept time in our family for 3 generations. Throughout these activities, I checked my phone periodically, hoping for a message from Zara. None came, but Mom seemed unconcerned. She'll return when she's ready, she assured me. Some journeys can't be rushed. Evening approached, and still no word from Zara. Thorsten hadn't returned either, according to Mom's observations. I prepared a light dinner for us, using the fresh herbs from the kitchen garden that Mom had maintained despite Thorsten's objection that they spoiled the clean lines of the landscaping. As we ate, the sound of the front door opening brought us both to attention. Zara appeared in the doorway, her face windburned from hours outdoors, her expression composed but determined. I thought I'd find you both here, she said, dropping her backpack on a chair. Something smells wonderful. Lemon herb chicken, Mom replied. Your mother made plenty. Are you hungry? Starving, Zara admitted, washing her hands at the easy sink before joining us at the table. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, allowing Zara the space to speak when ready. Finally, she set down her fork and looked directly at me. I've been thinking all day, she began. About Dad, about Thorsten, about what kind of person I've become in this marriage. I waited, resisting the urge to fill the silence with reassurances. When I met Thorsten, I was still raw from losing Dad. He seemed so confident, so capable. Everything I didn't feel. He made decisions when I could barely choose what to wear. Each morning, she sighed. I confused that decisiveness with strength. I mistook his controlling nature for protection. It's a common pattern, I said gently, especially after trauma. She nodded. Today in the woods, I found Dad's old hiking journal in my backpack. I'd forgotten it was there, reading his observations about nature, about me as a teenager, about his hopes for my future. Her voice cracked slightly. Dad never wanted me to shrink myself for anyone. And that's exactly what I've been doing with Thorsten. What do you want to do? I asked carefully. I'm not sure about everything yet, she admitted. But I know I can't continue living like this. I've been complicit in Thorsten's mistreatment of Grandma. I've watched him systematically erase our family's presence from this house. I've allowed him to make me feel like my opinions don't matter. Mom reached across the table to cover Zara's hand with her own. Recognizing the pattern is the first step toward breaking it. There's something else, Zara said, her expression troubled. After Thorsten showed me Dad's letter this morning, I called Dad's old assistant, Marcus. I asked if Dad had ever mentioned being ill during that last year. I tensed, uncertain. I wanted to hear the answer. Marcus was shocked by the question, Zara continued. He said Dad had never mentioned any health concerns. In fact, he'd just completed his annual physical with flying colors 2 months before he died. The implication hung in the air between us. You think the letter is a forgery? I asked. I think. Zara chose her words carefully. I think Thorsten has shown an ability to manipulate documents when it serves his purposes. And I think it's suspicious that this letter appears only now, when you're challenging his control of the company. It was a devastating possibility that had been lurking at the edges of my consciousness all day. The letter had seemed authentic. The handwriting, the tone, the expressions all distinctly Elliott's. But the content had struck me as fundamentally inconsistent with the man I'd been married to for 27 years. There's a way to verify it, Mom suggested. Elliott's journals. He wrote nearly every day, especially when something was weighing on his mind. She was right. Elliott had maintained detailed journals throughout his adult life, leather-bound books filled with his thoughts, observations, and plans. After his death, I had packed them carefully in archival boxes, unable to bear reading them, but unwilling to part with such an intimate record of his inner life. They're in my storage unit, I said. The journals from his final year would tell us if he was aware of any serious illness. I'll go with you to get them first thing tomorrow, Zara offered. If Thorsten has been lying about this, I need to know. The determination in her voice was both a relief and a concern. Zara, if the letter is a forgery, it means Thorsten has gone to extraordinary lengths to maintain control. That could make the situation volatile when confronted. I know, she acknowledged. That's why I've already packed some essentials. I'm coming home with you tonight, if that's okay. Grandma, too. The simplicity of her statement belied its significance. My daughter was choosing to leave her home, at least temporarily, rather than continue living with deception. Of course, I agreed immediately. But my apartment is small. We'll manage, Mom interjected with characteristic practicality. It won't be the first time we've made do with tight quarters. Remember that summer the plumbing failed at our lake cottage? The memory of 3 generations crammed into a single bedroom while repairs dragged on brought unexpected laughter from all of us. A moment of lightness amid the tension. As we prepared to leave, gathering essential items for Mom and Zara, I noticed my daughter pausing in each room, touching familiar objects as if saying goodbye. In the master bedroom, she carefully packed a few pieces of jewelry and personal mementos but left most of her possessions behind. I can always come back for things if necessary, she explained when I questioned her minimal packing. Right now, I just need space to think clearly, away from all this. She gestured around the room, which had been transformed from the warm, personal space she had created into something that resembled an upscale hotel suite. Beautiful, but impersonal. Mom was equally pragmatic, focusing on medications and a few comfort items. "Most of what matters came down from the attic today," she said. "The rest is just things." We left a note for Thorsten explaining that we were staying at my apartment for a few days, to give everyone space to process recent revelations. Zara added her cell number, asking him to text rather than call. As we pulled away from the house, my old house, now barely recognizable beneath Thorsten's renovations, I glanced at my daughter in the rearview mirror. Her expression was solemn but resolute, her posture straighter than I'd seen in years. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. She met my eyes in the mirror. "Not yet, but I will be." We settled into my apartment as best we could, Mom taking the small guest room, Zara on the pull-out sofa. The quarters were cramped, but somehow comforting, reminiscent of family vacations and holiday gatherings when physical proximity created emotional closeness. Around midnight, as I passed through the living room for a glass of water, I found Zara still awake, scrolling through old photos on her tablet. "Can't sleep?" I asked, sitting beside her. "Too much on my mind," she admitted. "I found these photos from before I met Thorsten. Look how different I was." The images showed a vibrant young woman with confident eyes and an easy smile, hiking, laughing with friends, presenting at a design conference. The contrast with the subdued, cautious person she had become was striking. "You know what's strange?" she continued, swiping through the images. "I didn't even notice the change happening. It was so gradual. First, it was just easier to go, along with Thorsten's suggestions, than to argue. Then it became habit. Eventually, I stopped having opinions altogether on things that mattered to him." "That's how it often works," I said gently. "Small concessions that don't seem significant. In isolation." She nodded, pausing on a photo of herself with Elliott, both beaming as they stood atop a mountain peak. "Dad would be so disappointed in how I've let myself be diminished." "No," I corrected firmly. "He would be proud of you for recognizing it now and taking steps to reclaim yourself. Moving forward matters more than looking back with regret." She leaned against my shoulder, a gesture of closeness we hadn't shared in too long. "Thanks, Mom. For not saying I told you so." "When have I ever?" I teased, earning a small smile. "Never," she acknowledged. "Even when you must have wanted to." We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes before she spoke again. Thorsten texted, "While you were helping Grandma get settled, just one word. Really? That's it?" "That's his way," she explained. "When he's angry but trying to maintain control, he gets very terse. It's actually more concerning than when he vents." The observation revealed how attuned she had become to his moods, constantly reading subtle signals to navigate his emotions, another sign of the unhealthy dynamic that had developed between them. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked quietly. "We get your father's journals," I replied. "We learn the truth about his health, and then we decide our next steps based on what we find." She nodded, seemingly comforted by the concrete plan. "And Lighthouse? Verity Holdings?" "One step at a time. First, we establish what's true and what isn't. Then we can make informed decisions about the business aspects." As she finally settled to sleep, I returned to my bedroom, my mind churning with questions. Had Elliott really kept a terminal illness secret from us? If not, what did that reveal about Thorsten's character and intentions? And most urgently, how would Thorsten respond when he realized Zara had left with her grandmother? Morning brought text messages from Thorsten, their frequency and increasingly demanding tone suggesting escalating agitation. "Where are you?" 6:15 a.m. "We need to talk. Call me." 6:42 a.m. "This is childish, Zara. Come home immediately." 7:10 a.m. Your absence is complicating an already difficult situation. 7:36 a.m. I'm trying to protect our family's interests. You're making that impossible. 8:03 a.m. Zara read each message without responding, her expression growing more determined with each one. He always does this, she observed. Creates urgency to force compliance. We ate a quick breakfast before heading to my storage unit. Across town. The facility was climate-controlled, designed to protect valuable documents and heirlooms, a necessity I had splurged on when downsizing to my apartment. Inside the unit, we located the archival boxes containing Elliott's journals, organized by year. The box from his final year was sealed with special tape to protect the contents from humidity. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I asked Zara as we prepared to open it. "These are his private thoughts." She nodded decisively. "Dad would want us to know the truth, especially if someone is using his name to manipulate us." With careful hands, I broke the seal and lifted the lid. Inside were 4 leather-bound journals, each covering approximately 3 months. We removed the one spanning the period when the letter to Thorsten was supposedly written. My hands trembled slightly as I opened to the first entry. Elliott's familiar handwriting bringing an immediate tightness to my throat. Zara moved closer, her shoulder pressed against mine for mutual support as we began to read. What we discovered would change everything. Elliott's journal revealed a truth both simpler and more devastating than we had imagined. The entries were meticulous, as was his way, detailed observations about business developments, family moments, and personal reflections. But nowhere in those pages was there any mention of a terminal illness, doctor visits, or concerns about his health beyond the occasional stress headache. What we did find were numerous references to Thorsten Blackwood. May 15th, met with young property manager today, Thorsten Blackwood. Ambitious, articulate, with innovative ideas for the historic district. Seeking investment for expansion. Will. Consider after due diligence. June 3rd, preliminary financials on Blackwood's Lighthouse venture concerning. Growth projections seem inflated, expenses understated. Requesting additional documentation before proceeding. June 18th, second meeting. With Blackwood. Clarified several discrepancies in business plan. Still hesitant about investment structure. Suggested modified approach with stronger oversight mechanisms. He seemed resistant. July 7th. Blackwood showing troubling patterns. Contacted references from previous ventures. 3 former partners described similar experiences. Initial charm giving way to controlling behavior, financial opacity. Proceeding with extreme caution. July 28th. Decision made. Will not invest in Lighthouse under current terms. Something about Blackwood doesn't sit right. Intuition says, walk away. The final entry about Thorsten, dated just 5 days before Elliott's fatal heart attack, was the most revealing. August 12th. Uncomfortable conversation with Blackwood today. Informed him of decision not to invest. His reaction concerning, briefly hostile before regaining composure. Implied he had other ways to move forward with expansion plans. Made cryptic reference to alternative arrangements that would benefit us both. Declined further discussion. Consider matter closed. I sat back, stunned by the implications. Elliott wasn't dying. He wasn't investing in Thorsten's company. In fact, he explicitly decided against it. Zara's face had gone pale. The letter was completely fabricated. Not just fabricated, I corrected, my voice hardening. It was designed to manipulate both of us, to create a false narrative about Elliott's intentions and undermine our confidence in our own memories. We continued reading, finding entries about Elliott's plans for expanding his consulting business, his excitement about Zara's design aspirations, and his ideas for my upcoming birthday. The journal painted a picture of a healthy, engaged man with hopes and plans for the future, not someone secretly facing a terminal diagnosis. The entry from the day before his death was particularly poignant. August 16th. Anniversary planning underway. 28 years with Marceline next month. Reserved the cabin at Clearwater Lake. Ordered the sapphire pendant she admired in Zurich last year. After all this time, still find myself looking forward to quiet evenings with her more than anything else? How did I get so lucky? Tears blurred my vision as I read his words. Zara squeezed my hand, her own eyes glistening. He wasn't keeping secrets from us, she whispered. No, I agreed. He wasn't. We read through the entire journal, confirming what we already knew. Elliott had been in good health and good spirits right up until his sudden death from an undetected heart condition. The narrative Thorsten had presented was a complete fabrication. But how did Thorsten create the company if Dad didn't invest? Zara wondered. And how did he make it appear that you owned it? Those are the questions we need answered, I replied, carefully returning the journal to its box. And I think we need specialized help. Back at the apartment, I contacted Leona with our discoveries. Her response was immediate and definitive. This changes everything, she declared. We're no longer just dealing with financial mismanagement. We're looking at potential fraud, forgery, and criminal deception. I'm bringing in Harrison Wells from my firm's forensic accounting department. Oh, while we waited for Leona and her colleague to arrive, Zara's phone continued to buzz with messages from Thorsten, each more demanding than the last. Your mother is manipulating you. Come home now so we can discuss this rationally. 10:22. First, your absence is being noted by business associates. This is damaging our reputation. 11:05 a.m. If you're not home by 3 p.m., I'll be forced to take more serious steps. 11:47 a.m. The vague threat in the last message sent a chill through me. What does he mean by more serious steps? Zara shook her head. It's another control tactic. He's always vague about consequences to maximize anxiety. Mom, who had been quietly observing our morning's discoveries, finally spoke up. I think it's time we took this to the authorities. Forging documents, financial exploitation, these are criminal matters. We need to understand exactly what he's done first, I cautioned. If we go to the police now, it might be dismissed as a family dispute without clear evidence of crimes. Leona arrived with Harrison Wells, a compact man with shrewd eyes and a methodical manner. After reviewing our findings, he requested immediate access to all the financial records Thorsten had provided. Look for inconsistencies in document formatting, he advised as he sorted through the papers. Forgeries often contain subtle differences in fonts, spacing, or paper quality that aren't apparent at first glance. He was right. Under careful examination, the documents purporting to give Thorsten management authority over Verity Holdings showed signs of digital manipulation, slight variations in the letterhead compared to genuine documents from Elliott's attorney, inconsistent spacing between paragraphs. These were created by inserting new content into scanned copies of legitimate documents, Harrison confirmed, professionally done, but detectable under scrutiny. The true revelation came when Harrison began tracing the financial history of Verity Holdings. According to state business filings, the company was indeed created 3 weeks before Elliott Thornfield's death. The initial paperwork was filed by Elliott, but the ownership structure was modified 2 months after his death. Modified how? I asked. Originally, Elliott was listed as the sole owner. After his death, amended articles were filed showing a transfer of 49% ownership to Thorsten Blackwood, with you retaining 51%. But here's where it gets interesting. The signatures on these amendments appear to match samples of your signature. But the notary's stamp belongs to someone whose license was revoked 3 months earlier for improper practices. I never signed any such documents, I stated firmly. I believe you, Harrison assured me. These signatures were almost certainly forged, sophisticated work, but forgeries nonetheless. So Thorsten created a paper trail making it appear that he legitimately owned 49% of a company that Elliott had established, when in reality, Elliott had explicitly decided not to go into business with him, Leona summarized. Exactly, Harrison confirmed. He then used this fabricated ownership position to leverage control over Lighthouse Property Management, essentially building his business on stolen authority. But how did he fund it initially? Zara wondered. Starting a property management company requires capital. Harrison's expression turned grim. That's where things get even more disturbing. There were substantial withdrawals from Elliott's business accounts immediately after his death, transactions that would have required authorized signatures. My blood ran cold. Are you saying Thorsten stole from Elliott's accounts? It appears so. Over $300,000 was transferred to Lighthouse's operating account within weeks of your husband's passing. Given what we now know about the forged documents, it's highly likely these transfers were unauthorized. The full picture was beginning to emerge, a calculated scheme that had begun even before Elliott's death and accelerated afterward. Thorsten had targeted our family, using Elliott's sudden death as an opportunity to create a fictional business relationship and appropriate funds. What about my mother's house sale? I asked. How does that fit into this? Harrison examined those records carefully. The sale itself appears legitimate, proper market value, standard closing procedures. However, the distribution of proceeds shows clear misdirection. Only half the money went to your mother's account. The remainder was funneled through a series of transfers, ultimately landing in an offshore account connected to Thorsten's personal holdings. There is no elder care investment fund, I realized. None that we can find, Harrison confirmed. Mom's expression hardened. He stole from me, plain and simple. Leona, who had been taking detailed notes throughout, looked up with determination. We have more than enough here to take to the district attorney. This is organized criminal activity, forgery, fraud, elder financial abuse, and likely identity theft. These aren't civil matters, they're felonies. Before we could discuss next steps, Zara's phone rang. Not a text this time, but a call from Thorsten. She stared at the screen, then turned to me with resolve in her eyes. I should answer. See what he wants. I nodded and she put the phone on speaker. Zara, finally. Thorsten's voice sounded strained but controlled. This situation has gone far enough. I need you to come home. I'm staying with Mom for now, she replied calmly. I need space to process everything that's happening. What you need, he countered, his tone hardening, is to stop letting your mother poison you against me. She's never accepted me, never respected what I've built. Now she's trying to take it all away by manipulating you and Dorothea. That's not true, Zara stated firmly. Mom has always supported my choices, even when she had reservations. A tense silence followed. Then Thorsten's voice returned, softer now, almost conciliatory. I understand you're confused right now. Finding your father's letter must have been shocking, but running away isn't the solution. Come home and we'll work through this together. Zara's eyes met mine, seeking guidance. I nodded encouragingly, impressed by her composure. The letter wasn't real, Thorsten, she said quietly. We found Dad's journals today. He wasn't ill. He wasn't investing in your company. He had actually decided against it. Another silence, longer this time. When Thorsten spoke again, his voice had changed completely. Cold, calculating. So that's what this is about. You've been digging into ancient history instead of focusing on our future. Forging my father's signature and stealing from my grandmother isn't ancient history, Zara countered, her confidence growing. It's fraud. It's criminal activity. Be very careful with your accusations, Thorsten warned. You have no idea what you're talking about. Those journals could be anything. Fabricated, misinterpreted. Your father and I had private arrangements you knew nothing about. No, you didn't, Zara stated flatly. And we have forensic financial evidence proving the documents were forged. It's over, Thorsten. His laugh was chilling. Nothing is over until I say it is. You think you can just walk away? Everything you have, that house, your comfortable lifestyle, your precious design career, all of it exists because of me. Without me, you're nothing. The naked hostility shocked even me, who had long suspected Thorsten's true nature. Zara, however, seemed strangely calm in the face of his aggression. That's where you're wrong, she replied. I was someone before I met you, someone with talents, dreams, and self-respect. I forgot that for a while, but I'm remembering now. Don't be dramatic, he sneered. What's your plan? Move into your mother's tiny apartment permanently? Good luck maintaining your standard of living on a freelance designer's income. I'd rather live authentically in a studio apartment than continue living a lie in a mansion, Zara responded. But that's not really the point, is it? The point is that you've committed multiple crimes, and we have proof. Proof? He scoffed. You have nothing but conjectures and misunderstandings. By the time this plays out in court, if it ever does, the business will have suffered irreparable damage. Is that what you want? To destroy everything we've built? We haven't built anything together, Zara realized aloud. You've built a house of cards on stolen money and forged documents. I just lived in it, unaware. His voice turned threatening. Last chance, Zara. Come home now, or there will be consequences you can't imagine. She met my eyes, drew a deep breath, and replied, No, I'm not coming home. And I think it's time for the authorities to review all of this evidence. The call ended abruptly. Zara set down the phone with trembling hands, the delayed reaction to the confrontation finally hitting her. You handled that beautifully, I told her, pulling her into a hug. He's never spoken to me like that before, she whispered against my shoulder. Not so. Nakedly hostile. Because you've never directly challenged him before, Mom observed, from her seat. People like Thorsten show their true colors when their control is threatened. Leona, who had been listening intently to the call, stood decisively. That conversation changes our timeline. His threats, combined with the evidence we've gathered, justify immediate action. We need to contact the district attorney today, not next week. What about a restraining order? I suggested, concerned about Thorsten's escalating behavior. Absolutely, Leona agreed. We'll request emergency protective orders for all three of you based on his explicit threats. As Leona made calls to set things in motion, Harrison continued his meticulous examination of the financial records. There's something else here, he announced, frowning at his laptop screen. The funding structure for those 17 properties Lighthouse manages doesn't align with standard practices. What do you mean? I asked. In a typical property management arrangement, each property would have clear ownership documentation, with Lighthouse contracted to handle operations. But several of these properties show unusual ownership arrangements, shell companies, circular ownership structures. It's as if he's been deliberately obscuring who actually owns what. Could he be claiming ownership of properties he only manages? Zara wondered. Harrison nodded slowly. That's exactly what I'm concerned about. He may be leveraging assets he doesn't legally control to secure additional financing. This possibility added yet another layer of deception to Thorsten's operations. If he had been misrepresenting ownership of managed properties to financial institutions, the fraud extended well beyond our family. Our strategy session was interrupted by an urgent knock at the apartment door. Wary after Thorsten's threats, I approached cautiously and checked the peephole. To my surprise, it was Marcus Jensen, Elliott's former assistant. I let him in, noting his agitated state. Marcus, what are you doing here? Zara called me yesterday about Elliott's health, he explained breathlessly. It got me thinking about that last year, things that didn't make sense at the time. I started going through my old work files and found something you need to see. He pulled a folder from his messenger bag. After Elliott died, Thorsten came to the office, saying he needed to collect some business documents they had been working on together. I was skeptical since I'd handled most of Elliott's business correspondence and never seen anything about a partnership between them. But he was insistent, claiming Elliott had kept their arrangement confidential. "What did you do?" Zara asked. I allowed him limited access to Elliott's files while I supervised. He seemed disappointed by what he found, or didn't find. Before leaving, he asked if I had access to signature samples for both Elliott and Marceline, claiming he needed them for continuity in the partnership documentation. My stomach tightened. "Did you give them to him?" Marcus shook his head, firmly. "Absolutely not. It seemed inappropriate. But here's what I discovered yesterday when I checked my archived files." He opened the folder to reveal a series of emails. After I refused to provide signatures, Thorsten apparently approached Jennifer in accounting. These messages show her sending him digital copies of documents containing both your signatures, contracts, tax forms, authorization letters. That's how he created the forgeries, I realized. He had authentic signatures to copy. Exactly, Marcus confirmed. Jennifer didn't realize what she was enabling. Thorsten told her he was helping settle Elliott's affairs with your authorization. This new evidence further confirmed the deliberate, premeditated nature of Thorsten's fraud. He hadn't opportunistically taken advantage of Elliott's death. He had methodically gathered the tools needed to execute a complex deception. Leona immediately recognized the value of Marcus's discovery. This establishes intent and premeditation. Would you be willing to provide a formal statement to the district attorney? Of course, Marcus agreed readily. Elliott was more than my boss. He was my mentor. I've always felt uneasy about Thorsten's claims of a partnership. Finding out now that he essentially stole Elliott's identity after his death, I want to help however I can. As Marcus provided details to Leona, Zara's phone buzzed with another text from Thorsten. Since you've chosen to escalate this situation, I've been forced to take protective measures. Check your email. With trepidation, Zara opened her email. Account to find a message from Thorsten with a single PDF attachment. The document appeared to be a draft legal complaint naming Zara, Mom, and me as defendants in a civil suit alleging business interference, defamation, elder manipulation, and emotional distress. "He's threatening to sue us," Zara said incredulously. Leona glanced at the document and snorted dismissively. Classic intimidation tactic. File a lawsuit filled with outrageous claims hoping the threat of litigation will force compliance. It's a bluff, one that will backfire spectacularly once the criminal investigation begins. Even knowing it was likely an empty threat, seeing our names in a legal document alleging we had manipulated and exploited Mom was deeply disturbing. Thorsten was not just threatening our financial security. He was attempting to rewrite the high narrative of our family relationships. "How do we respond to this?" I asked Leona. "We don't," she replied firmly. "Not directly. The criminal investigation will take precedence over any civil claims he attempts to file. Let him waste money on legal fees while we focus on gathering evidence for the prosecutor." The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Leona arranging an emergency meeting with the district attorney's office, Harrison compiling financial evidence, Marcus providing his statement about Thorsten's document access after Elliott's death. By evening, we had submitted formal requests for protective orders and initiated the process for a criminal fraud investigation. Throughout these developments, Zara remained remarkably composed, though I could see the emotional toll in the shadows beneath her eyes and the tension in her shoulders. When we finally had a moment alone, as Mom rested and our legal team departed with promises to return in the morning, I found her staring out the apartment window at the darkening sky. "How are you holding up?" I asked gently. She turned to me with a sad smile. Processing. It's strange. I'm devastated but also relieved. Like I've been carrying a weight I didn't recognize until it was lifted. The weight of constant doubt, I suggested, of wondering if your perceptions are accurate. Exactly. She sighed deeply. For years, whenever I questioned Thorsten's decisions or felt uncomfortable with his actions, he would make me feel like I was being irrational or oversensitive. He'd remind me how emotional I was after Dad died, how I couldn't trust my own judgment. The classic tactics of gaslighting, making someone doubt their own perceptions until they become dependent on the manipulator's version of reality. That's how controlling people operate, I said. They isolate you from outside perspectives, then slowly distort your sense of normal. The worst part is how blind I was to what was happening with Grandma, Zara continued, guilt clouding her features. I knew the attic wasn't appropriate, but I let him convince me it was temporary, necessary, not that bad. I compromised on things I never should have compromised on. You can't blame yourself, I insisted. Thorsten is a skilled manipulator. He targeted our family deliberately, using our grief over Elliott to create openings for his deception. Even I didn't see the full picture until recently. She nodded, though not entirely convinced. What happens now? Legally, I mean. Based on what Leona said, the district attorney will review our evidence and decide whether to pursue criminal charges. Given the documentation we have, particularly the forged financial instruments and the elder financial abuse, charges seem likely. And the protective orders? Should be granted by tomorrow morning given the explicit threats. That will legally prevent Thorsten from contacting any of us or coming near this apartment, Mom's nursing home, or my office. Zara absorbed this information, then asked the question that had clearly been weighing on her. What about the house? My home. Our home. If everything was built on fraud, what happens to it? It was a complicated question without easy answers. Technically, the house purchase was legitimate. You and Thorsten bought it from me, and I received the agreed-upon payment. The fraud involved how Thorsten obtained those funds, not the transaction itself. So, it's still our house, she concluded. Legally, yes, though the mortgage may be affected if it was obtained using misrepresented assets. But Zara, I added gently, is it still your home? Do you want to return there? She considered this thoughtfully. I don't know. So many memories, good ones from growing up, complicated ones from my marriage. Right now, it feels tainted by deception. You don't have to decide anything tonight, I assured her. One step at a time. She nodded gratefully, then asked, could we check on the house tomorrow? Just to make sure everything's okay? I left in such a hurry, and with Thorsten's state of mind. The request seemed reasonable, though I was concerned about potential confrontation if Thorsten was there. We'll coordinate with the police. Once the protective orders are in place, they can escort us briefly if necessary. This plan seemed to ease some of Zara's anxiety. We spent the remainder of the evening in quiet conversation, Mom joining us after her rest to share stories about Elliott that Zara had never heard. Small, meaningful moments that painted a fuller picture of the father she had lost too soon. As we prepared for bed, the apartment now feeling less cramped and more like a sanctuary, my phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. Property record search complete per your request. Unusual findings to discuss. Available to meet. Tomorrow morning. D. Whitlock. It was Desmond, the private investigator I had initially consulted when concerns about Mom's living situation first arose. With everything that had happened, I had almost forgotten his ongoing research into Thorsten's property dealings. I replied confirming a meeting for the following morning, curious about what unusual findings he might have uncovered. Despite the progress we had made, I sensed there were still aspects of Thorsten's deception we had yet to discover. That night, I slept fitfully, my dreams filled with fragments of Elliott's journals, Thorsten's threats, and haunting images of Mom struggling. Up the attic stairs. I awoke before dawn, my mind already racing with the day's priorities: meeting Desmond, securing the protective orders, coordinating with the district attorney's office. As I quietly made coffee, trying not to wake Zara sleeping on the sofa. Bed. My phone buzzed with an alert from my home security system. Motion detected at the front door. Curious, I opened the app to view the camera feed and froze. The screen showed Thorsten standing on my apartment doorstep, his normally impeccable appearance disheveled, his expression a disturbing mixture of rage and determination. Even more concerning was what he held in his hand, a thick manila envelope with my name written across it in bold letters. As I watched, he placed the envelope against the door, staring directly into the security camera with cold purpose. His lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but could clearly understand. This isn't over. Then he was gone, disappearing. From the camera's view and leaving behind the mysterious envelope, a clear violation of the temporary restraining order we had secured late last night, and an ominous sign that the confrontation was far from resolved. With trembling fingers, I called the police to report the violation, then woke Zara to explain what had happened. As we waited for officers to arrive and secure the envelope, I couldn't shake the feeling that Thorsten's unannounced visit was more than simple defiance. It was a declaration that he would not surrender control without a fight. What we would discover inside that envelope would reveal the final piece of Thorsten's elaborate deception and force us to make the most difficult decision yet. The police arrived within 15 minutes, 2 officers approaching the suspicious envelope with appropriate caution. After examining it from all angles, they determined it contained only paper documents and carefully collected it as evidence of the restraining order violation. "We'll need statements from all of you," Officer Reyes explained, her notebook ready. "Particularly about when the order was granted and any other contact Mr. Blackwood has attempted since then." As Zara and I provided our accounts, a 3rd officer arrived with news that escalated the situation further. "We just received a call from the residents at 47 Laurel Street," he reported to his colleagues. "Neighbor reported unusual activity. Lights. On all night. Someone moving large items out of the house around 4 a.m. Zara's face paled. "That's our house. Thorsten's removing things. Given the protective order and ongoing investigation, we have grounds to perform a welfare check," Officer Reyes decided. "Ms. Thornfield, you said you wanted to inspect the property today anyway?" "Yes," Zara confirmed. "I'm concerned about family heirlooms and documents there. We can escort you once we've secured the scene," Officer Reyes said. "For now, let's focus on this envelope." The manila envelope contained what appeared to be property records for several buildings in Everton Heights, including Zara and Thorsten's home. Each document had been annotated in Thorsten's precise handwriting with a single phrase repeated throughout: "All mine now." Most disturbing was a crude modification to their home's deed. Zara's name had been crossed out with heavy black marker, a childish but chilling statement of intent. These appear to be altered copies, not legitimate legal documents, Officer Reyes observed, but they show clear intent to intimidate and a concerning state of mind. Mom, who had remained remarkably calm throughout the morning's developments, examined the papers with a clinical detachment that belied her years. "He's unraveling," she observed. "Powerful people often do when they lose control." Our phone call with Leona confirmed that Thorsten's actions had strengthened our case considerably. Breaking the protective order within hours of its issuance demonstrates dangerous disregard for legal boundaries, she explained. "I'll notify the district attorney immediately." While we waited for officers to secure the house before our visit, Desmond Whitlock arrived for our scheduled meeting. The private investigator's weathered face registered no surprise at finding police in my apartment. "Situation escalated, I see," he noted calmly, setting his laptop case on the counter. "Fortunate timing for what I've discovered." Once the officers had stepped outside to coordinate with their colleagues at the house, Desmond revealed the results of his investigation into Thorsten's property dealings. The 17 properties under Lighthouse Management share a peculiar pattern, he explained, displaying a complex diagram on his laptop. On paper, they're owned by 15 different entities: individual investors, family trusts, corporate holdings. But tracing the actual ownership reveals something entirely different. They're all connected to Thorsten somehow? I guessed. Not exactly. Desmond highlighted several nodes on his diagram. 12 of these properties, including your former home, are technically owned by subsidiaries of Verity Holdings. The company Thorsten fraudulently claimed was a partnership between himself and Elliott. The implication struck me forcefully. Are you saying I own those properties? According to the legitimate paperwork filed when Verity was established, yes. If Thorsten created the company using Elliott's identity before his death, then transferred control afterward using forged documents, the underlying assets would legally belong to Elliott's estate, which passed to you. Zara stared at the diagram in disbelief. So our house, the one I've been living in with Thorsten, actually belongs to Mom, even though we bought it from her? The purchase transaction appears to have been structured as an internal transfer within Verity Holdings, Desmond explained. The money never actually left the company's accounts. It was essentially moved from one Verity subsidiary to another, creating the appearance of a sale while maintaining underlying ownership. That's why he was so insistent on handling all the paperwork himself, I realized. The entire transaction was smoke and mirrors. Mom, who had been listening intently, asked the question foremost in all our minds. If Marceline legally owns these properties, what happens to the people living in them? The other families who believed they owned their homes? It was a sobering consideration. Thorsten's fraud potentially impacted dozens of innocent people who had purchased homes or invested in properties under false pretenses. That's where things get complicated, Desmond acknowledged. 3 of the properties are vacation rentals, currently empty. 4 are commercial buildings with legitimate leases. The remaining 5 are residential homes with families who believe they're the legal owners. The magnitude of Thorsten's deception was staggering. Not content with stealing from our family, he had constructed an elaborate shell game involving multiple properties and unsuspecting buyers. Those poor families, Zara whispered. They think they own their homes. This is beyond personal fraud. Now, I noted grimly, it's a scheme affecting the entire community. Officer Reyes returned with an update that confirmed our growing concerns. We've secured the residence at 47 Laurel Street. Mr. Blackwood was not present, but there's evidence of hasty packing and removal of items. Several neighbors reported a moving truck earlier this morning. Was anything taken from my grandmother's room? Zara asked anxiously. We can't determine that without you identifying what should be there, the officer explained. We're ready to escort you to the property now if you'd like to assess the situation. I hesitated, concerned about Mom's stamina after the stressful morning. Maybe you should stay here and rest while Zara and I'm coming, Mom interrupted. Firmly. That house was my home for over 30 years before I sold it to help you and Elliott. I deserve to see what's become of it, and what might be missing. Her determination was impossible to argue with. Within 20 minutes, we were approaching the house, a police cruiser following our car at a discreet distance. The elegant craftsman-style home that had sheltered generations of our family now felt strangely alien, its warm character buried beneath Thorsten's austere renovations. The front garden, once Mom's pride with its carefully tended perennials, had been replaced with low-maintenance ornamental grasses and stark sculptural elements. Inside, the disruption was immediately apparent. Drawers stood open in the entryway console, empty spaces on walls where artwork had been removed. A single man's shoe abandoned in the center of the foyer as if dropped in haste. He left in a hurry, Officer Chen observed, scanning the space. Professionally. Any idea where he might have gone? Zara shook her head. He has a cousin in Westbrook, but they're not close. Maybe a hotel? We moved through the house methodically, cataloging what was missing and what remained. Thorsten had taken his clothing, personal electronics, and financial documents. He had also removed several valuable paintings, the silver flatware set, AI wedding gift from Mom, and bizarrely, all the remote controls for the entertainment systems. Mom's room, thankfully, appeared untouched since we had helped her settle back downstairs from the attic. Her treasured possessions, the silver-framed photos, antique clocks, and handcrafted quilts, remained exactly where we had placed them. The master bedroom told a different story. Zara's clothing had been dumped from drawers onto the floor, her jewelry box emptied of its most valuable pieces. On the bed, arranged with disturbing precision, lay 3 items: Zara's wedding ring, which she had left behind in her hasty departure, a torn photograph of the 2 of them, and a business card for Leona Frost with a single word scrawled across. Oh, traitor. This should be documented as evidence of ongoing harassment, Officer Chen said, photographing the disturbing tableau. It shows a concerning escalation in targeted behavior. Zara stared at the items, her expression resolute rather than fearful. He's trying to intimidate me, make me feel violated and unsafe in my own home. Is it working? I asked gently. She considered this, then shook her head. No, I feel sad for him. This is the action of someone desperate, not powerful. We continued our inspection, finding similar scenes of calculated disruption throughout the house. Zara's design studio with sketches torn and supplies scattered, family photos removed from frames with Thorsten's image carefully left intact, refrigerator magnets rearranged to spell out, mine. In Thorsten's home office, the disruption was even more extensive. File cabinets stood empty, computer equipment removed, walls stripped of credentials and awards. A single document remained, centered on the desk, a printout of an offshore bank account with a substantial 7-figure balance. He left this deliberately, Officer Chen noted, photographing it before collecting it as evidence. Wanted you to see it. His escape fund, I surmised. Money siphoned from Lighthouse clients, my mother's house sale, possibly other sources. We haven't uncovered yet. The account was based in the Cayman Islands, notoriously difficult for U.S. authorities to access. If Thorsten had indeed fled with these funds, recovering them would be challenging at best. In the kitchen, Mom ran her hands along the marble countertops that had replaced her beloved butcher block surfaces. So much changed, she murmured. Not just things, but feeling. This house had a heart once. It still does, Zara assured. Her, though her eyes reflected uncertainty as she surveyed the cold, showroom-perfect space Thorsten had created, somewhere underneath all this. As we completed our assessment, Leona called with urgent news. The district attorney has approved a warrant for Thorsten's arrest based on the restraining order violation and accumulated evidence of fraud. They're also freezing all accounts connected to Lighthouse Property Management and Verity Holdings pending investigation. What about the offshore account? I asked, describing our discovery in the office. That's more complicated, she admitted. But the district attorney is contacting the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network to pursue international asset tracing. Has Thorsten attempted contact again since this morning? No, but he left messages throughout the house, I explained. It's clear he's not thinking rationally. All the more reason to exercise extreme caution, Leona warned. Individuals like Thorsten often become most dangerous when they feel cornered. Stay with the police escort, and don't return to the property alone until he's in custody. After completing our documentation of missing items and concerning evidence, we prepared to leave. In the entryway, Zara paused, her expression troubled as she surveyed what had once been her dream home. I don't think I can live here again, she admitted quietly. Too many layers of deception built into these walls now. You don't have to decide anything today, I reminded her. One step at a time. Outside, neighbors had gathered at a respectful distance, curiosity piqued by the police presence. Mrs. Abernathy, who had lived across the street for 40 years, approached cautiously. "Is everything all right, dear?" she asked Zara. "We saw a moving truck at such an odd hour this morning. Then police. We've been worried." Zara offered a simplified explanation about Thorsten's departure and ongoing legal matters, careful not to share details that might compromise the investigation. Mrs. Abernathy's response was unexpected. "Well, it's about time," she declared emphatically. "That man never belonged here. Too slick by half. And the way he spoke to your grandmother, unconscionable. My Herbert would have had words if he were still with us." Her straightforward support brought the first genuine smile I'd seen on Zara's face in days. "Thank you, Mrs. Abernathy. That means a lot." Back at my apartment, we convened with our expanding team, Leona, Harrison, Desmond, and now Detective Walsh from the Financial Crimes Unit, assigned to coordinate the multifaceted investigation. "We're treating this as a high-priority case," Detective Walsh explained. "Multiple victims, sophisticated fraud, potential flight risk with significant assets. Our immediate focus is locating Blackwood before he can leave the country." "What about the other homeowners?" Mom asked, her concern for the additional victims unwavering. "The families who believe they own properties that are actually part of this scheme?" It was the question that had been weighing on all our minds: how to unravel Thorsten's deception without creating additional victims in the process. "Legally, it's complex," Leona acknowledged. "If the properties were acquired through fraudulent means but sold to good faith purchasers, those transactions exist in a gray area. Unwinding them would require extensive litigation with uncertain outcomes." "I don't want to put other families through that," I said firmly. "There must be a better solution." Harrison, who had been analyzing the property records Desmond uncovered, offered a potential path forward. "What if we restructured Verity Holdings as a legitimate entity with transparent ownership and proper management? The company could honor the existing property sales, effectively ratifying them after the fact." "Would that work legally?" Zara asked. "With proper documentation and oversight, yes," Leona confirmed. "It would require significant administrative effort, but it could protect the innocent purchasers while still allowing us to pursue criminal charges against Thorsten." The approach felt right, addressing the harm without creating new victims. "That's what we'll do then," I decided. "Whatever paperwork is needed, whatever process it takes, those families deserve security in their homes." As our team dispersed, to implement various aspects of the plan, Zara, Mom, and I found ourselves alone for the first time since the morning's revelations. The emotional weight of the day settled around us like a heavy blanket. "I keep thinking about the life I thought I had," Zara said softly. "The husband I believed loved me, the home I thought we built together. Was any of it real?" "Your contributions were real," Mom assured her. "Your design work, your care for the home, your attempts to make the marriage work, those came from an authentic place, even if his didn't." I watched my daughter absorb this perspective, seeing echoes of her younger self emerging from beneath the careful restraint Thorsten had cultivated in her. "What will you do now?" I asked gently. She considered this thoughtfully. "Rebuild, I suppose. My career first. I've missed creating spaces that feel like home instead of showpieces. And perhaps—" She hesitated, then continued with growing confidence. "Perhaps I'll finish that design certification I started before I met Thorsten, the one he said was unnecessary because I had natural talent." "You'd be wonderful at that," I encouraged. "Your father always said you had not just an eye for beauty, but a sense for how spaces affect people emotionally." The mention of Elliott brought a soft smile to her face. "I found some of his journals at the house today, the ones he kept in his workshop. I brought them with me. She retrieved a small leather-bound book from her bag. This one has sketches of furniture he planned to build for future grandchildren. He never stopped planning for our family's future. The poignancy of this discovery, Elliott's hopes for grandchildren he would never meet, created a moment of shared grief and connection between us. It was a reminder that beneath the trauma of Thorsten's deception lay the genuine foundations of our family's love. 3 days later, we received the news we had been anxiously awaiting. Thorsten had been apprehended attempting to board a private flight to Grand Cayman. In his possession were multiple passports under different names, data storage devices containing financial records, and nearly $50,000 in cash. He's being held without bail pending arraignment, Detective Walsh informed us. The evidence seized during the arrest strengthens our case considerably. The district attorney is confident we can secure convictions on multiple felony counts. The relief was palpable, though tempered by awareness of the lengthy legal process ahead. Thorsten would have resources for his defense, connections to exploit, and the desperate motivation of someone facing significant prison time. That evening, as we shared a quiet dinner in my apartment, now feeling less cramped and more cozy, with each passing day, Mom raised her glass in a simple toast. To truth, she said, however painful its emergence. We touched glasses solemnly, each of us reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this moment. The reckoning had begun with my simple determination to move my mother out of an attic, but had revealed layers of deception none of us could have imagined. In the weeks that followed, we established a new rhythm to our lives. Mom moved into the guest bedroom of my apartment permanently, bringing her organizational skills and quiet wisdom to our daily routines. Zara enrolled in her certification program and began freelancing, rediscovering her authentic design voice away from Thorsten's controlling influence. The legal proceedings advanced steadily. Thorsten, facing overwhelming evidence, eventually accepted a plea agreement that included significant restitution, forfeiture of assets, and substantial prison time. The process of restructuring Verity Holdings proceeded under court supervision, with Harrison's expert guidance ensuring that innocent homeowners would retain their properties with proper documentation. 6 months after that fateful morning when I confronted Thorsten with the truth about Verity Holdings, Zara and I stood in the driveway of our family's craftsman home, her childhood home, my marital home, the place where Elliott had built furniture, in his workshop and Mom had tended her garden. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, watching her face carefully for any sign of hesitation. She nodded decisively. "It's the right thing. This house deserves a family who will love it without the shadows we would bring." The for sale sign stood ready beside us, waiting to be placed. After careful consideration, Zara had decided to sell the house, unable to separate it from the painful memories of Thorsten's deception. The proceeds would be divided, half to fund her fresh start in a small studio she had found near the design district, half to establish a foundation addressing elder financial abuse in Elliott's name. "Dad would approve," she said, as if reading my thoughts. "He always said homes should bring joy, not burden." Together, we planted the sign in the front lawn, Mom watching from the porch with a serene smile. As we stepped back to regard it, a young couple walked by with a stroller, pausing to admire the house's classic lines and beautiful stonework. "Excuse me," the woman called. "Are you the owners? We've admired this house for years." Zara and I exchanged glances, a wealth of complicated emotions passing between us. Then my daughter stepped forward with the confident grace that was increasingly defining her recovery. "Yes," she replied simply. "Would you like to know its story?" Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.